Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first annual Top 10 Favorite Horror Films of All Time. I'm your host, Chad Miller. As you might know, I'm a huge film buff, and I try to incorporate all genres into my love of film. However, horror has been really difficult for me. I saw the movie Salem's Lot when I was really little, and it terrified me. And my babysitters at the time thought that was funny, so they would, jump scare me at every possible turn. So that movie kind of traumatized me. Um, and it wouldn't be until my early 20s that a good friend of mine would sit me down and make me watch three different horror films back to back. And I'm trying to think. Two of them have made the list, so good credit to you on there, my dear friend. Um, I've come to appreciate horror over the time, and there's still some things I don't like about the genre. I'm not big on blood and gore just for the sake of having blood and gore. Um, so that kind of really turns me off. Um, so movies like Saw um, aren't going to make the cut. I don't think I could stomach watching those. Um, I do like my horror films to have usually a little bit more of a psychological kind of creepiness to them. But, anyways, I digress. Let's get into the list. Starting off with number 10, we're going to go a little light on the fare here, and I'm going to say Shaun of the Dead. And while it's technically a comedy, there were some pretty kind of like scary moments, for me at least. So, I appreciate how it was interwoven into the comedy. So, a really enjoyable film with some scares. With number 9, we're going to go back to 1996 and the original Scream movie. And the reason why I love this film so much, it was done brilliantly, and it poked fun at the genre while the whole movie plays out. And I thought that was so ingenious, and um, yeah, so that is definitely one of my favorite films in the horror genre of all time. For number 8, we are going all the way back to 1931 for James Whale's Frankenstein. And this movie resonates with me on a film nerd level, just because it's so wonderfully made. Some of the stuff was so groundbreaking for its time. And while it's not particularly scary, the ending is just terrifying. Terrifying. And I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but if you're a film lover, if you haven't seen this, you need to see it. And if you have seen it, don't spoil the ending, but I would love to hear some discussion of what you all think about it. Coming in at number 6, we've got 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this is a movie I would lend toward gore for the sake of gore. But the way it was shot, I just found it mesmerizing because it really played into the mentality of not knowing whether or not you're going to die. So I just think the visuals of this film were tremendous, especially for its time. And it's been a long time since I've actually watched it. I haven't bothered with any of the remakes. I think some of these movies shouldn't be touched. Others are going to disagree with me on that, and that's fine. And maybe someday, who knows, I might. Depending on maybe some of your opinions out there. So, yep, that comes in at number 6. Number 5 is very interesting because this movie had a really good impact on me, and it was shown to me just way out of the blue. I had no knowledge of this director, Dario Argento, and he's an Italian filmmaker known for his horror films back in the 70s. And I was told to sit down and watch Deep Red, and I've only seen it that one time, and it was quite a long time ago. So, but it's resonated with me ever since. I haven't been able to find it on Blu-ray, at least at a reasonable price. From what I've seen, it's pretty expensive. So, at that point in time, Italian horror was its own thing, and I can see why. It was captivating. It kept you on the edge of your seats. The cinematography on that movie was really good. The color palettes were interesting, and yeah, I kind of wanted to put this a little bit higher on the list, but just because it's been so long since I've watched this film, I'm keeping it at number 5. Number 4 is going to bring us The Exorcist from 1973, and wow, I can't really put into words exactly. It almost makes me giddy at how deranged this movie is. And it's a must-watch for me every year about this time. So, I mean, just thinking about it, it gives me chills. And what they were able to do as far as like practical special effects in this film was really, really awesome. And I mean, and kudos to Linda Blair for dishing out such a painful performance. And I don't mean that her performance was painful. It's just, you could tell that she was giving it her all, and at such a young age. Yeah. It's chilling. Just, For number 3, I'm going with one of my favorite psychological thriller / horror films of all time, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. And that goes back to 1960? Yeah, 1960. And I have mad respect for Alfred Hitchcock and his direction style. So, And this movie has such a fascinating backstory to it. And Anthony Perkins is just brilliant in this movie. So yeah, I it's so funny too because I have the Funko Pop of Norman, and when I bought it, my husband was with me, and he was just like, "Is that a dude under there?" I'm like, "Have you not seen Psycho?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, now it's ruined for you because you know it's a dude under there." Now these two, it was so tough to decide. This whole list was tough to decide on, and I think as each year goes on, some of these movies will fall off my radar for that year depending on whatever level of film style I'm in love with at that time. So this was a really tough list. And between 1 and 2, I had a really, really hard time deciding which one was going to be number 1. So coming in at number 2 is John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. And this is one of those movies that pretty much almost from the very beginning up until the very end, I was on the edge of my seat. And kudos to John Carpenter, whom I actually got to meet at a horror movie convention years ago, and as well as Sid Haig, actually. Well, I didn't really meet him, I pointed him in the direction of the restrooms. But yeah, this is just so good. It's so good. And I don't think any of the subsequent Halloweens have been able to top it. I haven't even bothered with the most recent 3 that have basically killed off a lot of the sequels, the original sequels. Or I should say killed off, but retconned. And especially Halloween Ends, I hear, is just absolutely awful. So yeah, number 2 this year is going to John Carpenter's Halloween. So for the year of 2022, my favorite horror film of all time is Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Francis Ford Coppola, Gary Oldman, and some amazing visual effects, fantastic cinematography. This movie, because of being scared by vampires at an early age with Salem's Lot, I've had a love-hate relationship with vampires. And so this movie was hard for me to digest at first, but I kept coming back to it for so many different reasons, and one of them is not Keanu Reeves. But he did try. But there's so much that is amazing about that movie that you just kind of forget that Keanu was awful in this film. So yeah, that is my number 1 favorite horror film of all time for 2022. I thank you so much for watching. What are some of your favorite horror films, and tell me why in the comments below. I would love to have some recommendations. There are certainly some other movies that I love in this genre that haven't made this list this year. In fact, one just sprang to mind. And so maybe by next year I'll have a different mindset and we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, love and light. to you all.